Mirsha, another wonderful writer, international producer. Please, Mirsha, do your introduction and your interview with the lovely and talented Iryna. Hello,
Iryna
hello.
is a young poet, the Ukrainian poet, which was brought in the Czech Republic. It was a young generation, an excellent, a great young generation of Ukrainian poets that live in the Czech Republic and contribute a lot to the quality of the contemporary Central European poetry. And I'm very happy Iryna managed to make it today and to be with us. Thank you for being here, Iryna. Rick, as chief and producer-in-chief and realizer-in-chief, please give us the signal when to start, and we are here.
Ladies and gentlemen, let the games begin.
Ladies and gentlemen, good morning, actually good evening in Central Europe, good afternoon in the United States. In behalf of PNN, together with the producer, a poet and performer and scholar Rick Spisak, I have the honor to welcome all of you at a new edition of a new episode of the serial Poets of the East, the program which tries to bring you closer to the world poetry, because as we were telling before, unofficially, and we will repeat it officially as many times as it is necessary, Poets of the East means poets of the world, because anywhere we are placed on the globe, there is a point Easter to eat. Today, our invitation to participate to this special feminine episode was accepted by Deborah Hodgetts, a poet, performer, scholar, and a very educated multilateral artist. Welcome, Deborah. And Iryna Zahladko, a young and very talented, phenomenal poetess from Ukraine and Czech Republic. Actually, the way those two countries combined within her destiny will be revealed, I hope, to us by herself, because as I was saying a couple of minutes ago, also unofficially, there is within the contemporary Central European poetry a very strong generation of young Ukrainian poets which were brought up in Czech Republic or Slovakia, nevertheless kept Ukrainian as their mother tongue, kept Ukrainian as their creation language, and contributed to the richness of the world poetry, of the world literature, together with their poems. Iryna Zahladko, thank you very much for being today with us. Welcome at the Poets of the East. Ladies and gentlemen, Iryna Zahladko from Ukraine, Czech Republic, Central Europe.
Thank you, Mr. Efren, for such a warm introduction, and I'm really happy to be in such Georgia's company today. What could I add? Today, I'd like to read for you a few texts, and these are first texts from my Ukrainian poetry book, but these texts are translated into English, so it's like texts from I wrote it maybe like 7 years ago or 5, and also another kind of texts written in Czech Republic already, and some of them were already written in English, and some of them in Czech, but are translated into English now. And also maybe I could read one small prose text which I wrote like maybe 2 weeks ago, and it's connected somehow to current situation in Ukraine. Yeah, it's what everything what I was preparing for you for
this
listeners.
Is great. Thank you very much. We will be very happy to hear them. So as far as I understand, actually Ukrainian was your creation language until, let's say, 10 up to 7 years ago, and now you are writing also in English and directly in Czech.
Yeah, correct. Yeah.
And how long did you live in the Czech Republic?
Actually, in June this year, it's going to be only 3 years. Only 3, yeah. Not so
Okay.
long.
So actually, Ukraine represented for you mother culture, mother language, mother tongue, and the mother literature, because we were.
Yeah, I would say yeah, but I couldn't say that I'm so much connected to Ukrainian language and culture. But of course, it was something I was grew up with, and it's like made. I'm in some sense made of this language, of this culture and literature. Yeah, but I always felt open to another cultures, and I always was curious how is it to be in another culture, how to live in it, how to try to write, to express myself in some another environment. Yeah.
Yes, I think it is. It must be a very exciting experience, and I can talk from my own one, because myself as an author, even if I am a Romanian, I write in Czech, and I have always written in Czech since I started writing. So it is really a very peculiar experience writing in a different language than the mother tongue. Now we are very curious and happy to listen to your wonderful texts, and thank you very much for bringing them here for us.
Yeah, so the first text is called Orchid Cerberus. It's from my first poetry book. Under the orchid to fall asleep, under the orchid to wake up with the fatigue of a dog that was running all day long across the highway, wide like a field, to drink water at the roadside. Orchid is coming out like a chassis in the nightfall landing, throwing a moving shadow at the exhaustion that curl up between us. His nose is wet, his tail is snake. We are three-headed Cerberus. Give us your dream, and we will let you go to the other side of the night. Well, this is, I can say I have some special stories about this poem, but I see most of my poems, it's like some kind of pictures. It's some image that small story, picture story I see in my mind, and I just try like to describe it. Some, I don't know, it's like dreams or something, you know, something like that. So sometimes it's some kind of mythology, or yeah, some strange things. Another text.
Thank you very much for explaining this, because it was something I was about to ask you. On one hand, because of the richness and of the complexity of your metaphors, of your images. Now it is more explainable, as you mentioned, that actually they come as small movies, as small stories, video stories, let's say, which are actually taking birth in your appearing in your brain, and it is only afterwards that you are actually transforming them into words. Yes, this explains a lot, because even while translating your work into Romanian, I was very curious and I was very impressed in which way this complexity of your and the originality of your metaphors could be explained. But yes, this is a very good explanation. Do you happen to have studied film or something like this?
No, I don't. And I think sometimes also it is connected with some stories from outside world, but some additional magic happens in my mind. So it's always really some stories from real life, but very very changed, and yeah, more magic stories and small movies.
Yes, actually,
Yeah.
Dichtung und Wahrheit influencing them mutually. Thank you very much. So let us continue with your reading, if you would agree.
Yeah. The next poem is called Flourish Street, and there are a street in Lviv where I had been living, and it is called Flourish Street, like a floor, and there are no bakeries, no factories with floor. I don't know why this name, but I really like this street. It's very small and cozy, and also this naming, it always sounded like something unreal, a bit like maybe in the night when nobody is coming there, everything becomes white, like with floor, or something, really something magical is happening on this street. Yeah, so my fantasies about this. White color is white. I'm inhaling the floor and exhaling. Sweet dove in my lungs is growing up, filling in, ripening. No more place inside. No more air can come in there. The dove is rising now. Inside, trachea, ball in the throat, flavor in the mouth. Straw me a bit flour under the tongue. Nothing to stick. Put an oil on my lips, not to crack, while I will stay so long on the Flourish Street. So it's some, I don't know, like bakery fantasies, like dove is in my lungs. So it's maybe some kind of anxiety in this poetry, like, yeah, maybe something like that, something not very not some pleasure things, when you can't breathe because there are something in your lungs, some dove, some floor. Yeah, but I don't remember exactly how it happens that I wrote it, but now I feel there's some like strength, some anxiety, I would say.
Yes, actually, it's very interesting that it is to be felt. It is to be felt, that anxiety of yours, that idea that within all those abstract elements connected to flowers, it is this dove which somehow stops you from breathing, from feeling all those abstract, all those perfumed elements connected to the Flourish Street. And it's this I think this makes this is the most and very interesting element within the poem. Thank you very much for the explanation. It was at its place.
Yeah, thank you for listening. It's it's a good exercise to try to analyze own texts, because usually when I write, I don't think a lot what metaphor should be here and what should be here. Like, it's always comes just from my mind. I'm just writing it what I have in my mind, and some kind of analysis becomes possible, like maybe in a year sometimes. And in a year I can realize, wow, I wrote it and it means exactly this, not that. So
it is very interesting that you, as an author, have the possibility and the ability to distance yourself from the author you are, and to analyze it in a critical way, because usually authors are so much in love with their poems that they don't accept any kind of analysis. This is how I did it, and this is good, and dot. It's very interesting that actually next to the poem, in your case, is always a second poem, a critical poem, analyzing and explaining what you wrote there.
Yeah, and may happen that in several years I will have another thoughts about my poems. It may happen. So the next poem is called Christmas. I like Christmas. I was born on Christmas.
Oh,
on Ukrainian Christmas. Yeah, in 7th January. So mistletoe berries lie shattered. How am I supposed to botanize them now? Somebody will flip through the pages of my herbarium with nails as white as teeth. Somebody will move fingers across the pages that swell on mistletoe berries juice. The juice may be sour. It may as well be bitter. Turn over the page to find out, because now you lick your finger with a tongue as white as nails, which are as white as teeth, which are as white as the mistletoe berries, but not nearly as white as the snow this Christmas. Some time ago, I was making a herbarium myself.
Wonderful.
Yeah, I really like it, and this poem, and like herbarium, and yeah, actually I can say that I'm very nature person, so I'm not, I can say that I'm totally in love with nature. I'm really city person. I like urban stuff and so on, but sometimes these small parts of nature somewhere in the city makes me very like soft and touched. Yeah, so to have some herbarium somewhere between books is also such a touching thing for me. Yeah, and Christmas. Yeah, Christmas is very special day.
Actually, you appropriate into the intellectual dimension of yours, you appropriate parts of nature which you adapt to your intellectual dimension. Actually, it's not the big tree, it's not the big mountain, it's not the big river, but there are those small samples of plants within a book. If you want symbolically as well, I mean nature in a book, specifically for an intellectual poet.
Yeah.
This could be the start of a new poem, actually.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, good point.
Okay, so let's, or if you want to comment more, please feel free.
No, for this point, for this poetry, I think no more comments. Yeah.
Okay, so
Yeah.
let's continue.
Yeah, let's continue. Maybe I'll go to my new poems, like what was written in the first year of my living in Prague, and yeah, looking from the corner poem. My dress suits you, my face suits you. When you put it on frosty pillow with summer ornament. But my pillow has no questions, neither for you nor for my chair. That is used to your touches like a dog. nor for my table that is used to your touches like a horse. I have taught my furniture not to be jealous, but only tamed. I have learned to sew dresses from bedclothes, tablecloths, and curtains. Again, this last one suits you, even with wrinkles of my face on it, with print of your red lips. I see sunflowers of December. That's how I call the picture with you I see in my bedroom. Kingdom of winter, with a marvelous field in the middle, a horse and a dog are racing through a wall of giant flowers, and no one is broken, no one is touched. I have no questions. I'm watcher here. I'm pillow in the corner of uncovered empty bed, like December at the end of calendar. Well, this one is really hard to explain, even for myself, maybe because it's not so long time ago was written, but yeah, 2019. Yeah, and I guess maybe it's really first my English poem, the first one, I guess. Yeah, it was written maybe like 3-4 months after I moved to Prague, and I start written English and Czech because actually it was my new languages for communication, you know, because before I had been living in Ukraine, and I spoke English, a bit German and Polish, but I didn't write poems in this language. I wrote in Ukrainian because Ukrainian was my language for communication with people. It was language I had been living in some stories, and all these stories of my life were happened to me in Ukrainian language. And when I've started living in Prague, my main languages were at first English, because I hadn't spoke good enough Czech at first, so English was the first main communicational language, and that's why I guess I start written in English, because I mostly was communicating with people in English. Yeah, that's why it's my theory, you know, that poems, it's not only about language itself, but it's about language of communication with the world you are living in. Yeah.
Yes, actually, it says a lot. It explains a lot, and yes, it is to be felt here a completely different sensitivity. I mean, I'm not comparing. I'm not saying this is better, this is worse. No, it is something. It is just something different. It is in it. I think from this a very complex poem, it is to be felt that there were a lot of new things for you, a lot of new things you felt like giving form with also a new language, with some new expression.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Expression mean is actually a very interesting explanation from the point of view of the psychology of an intellectual that once obliged to live and to express him or herself in a different environment. Okay, let's hear some other texts if you agree, because they really deserve. Please.
Yeah. The next one is called Rivers Singing with Budget. I really love this poetry of Ron Padgett, and but I have only one his book. It is called Alone and Not Alone, and this is a poetry book I am It's a shame, but I'm reading it like maybe 3 years already, because I even don't remember that I have this book because I have it on my phone. But sometimes I'm reading it, and mostly I can remind it only in metro station or somewhere in public transport, and then, oh yeah, I have this book, I will read, and I read like a few texts and again switch my phone off, and again I forget about this book like for a few months. So I still reading it. It's not a big book, but I have been reading it for 3 years. So Rivers Singing with Budget. I will wait till the waiting become unbearable. As soon as you get used to it, it lets you go for a while. I will wait till the silence become unbearable and will start singing the poems from the book. I read on the subway every day with 2 adjectives alone on the cover. Adverbs or proper names? How proper are they? Can I appropriate one for a while? I will ask the doctor to write this name in prescription. Says the doctor. Yep. See you in a month. Don't be so scared of the side effects. It's only a book for a while. Yeah, such shit. Yeah.
This is almost performance. This is almost performance. I mean, all including all this quote and which actually expressing the way of thinking of this relationship between the psychologist and the patient. Oh my God,
Yeah.
it's really great.
Yeah.
Also written
So,
initially in English, right?
yeah, it's also in English from the beginning. Yeah, and the next one, it's a text. It was written partially in English and in Czech. So at some point, I've started write in Czech, but sometimes I felt like I don't know everything what I want to know, not all the words, and I was feeling this lack of a dictionary. So often I was just used to English words instead of Czech. Yeah, but this one now it is absolutely, it is translated to English. Yeah.
Okay.
Ocean full of jelly. Boiled sea becomes ocean, and fish starts the life of jellyfish. Life till the end of the age when the first rivers were born, when the watersheds have appeared. A jellyfish is dancing in white foam, remembering nothing. Jellyfish is gentle. Jellyfish is silent till the end of the ocean. Jellyfish has stopped and looked around. The sky above the port was the color of television turned to a dead channel. How are you feeling, Jelly? Is white noise white because of the salt in the water? Do jellyfishes go to cyberspace after they sting? There is no encyclopedia to find out. There is nobody who could tell. There is no narrator who could finish this story. Yeah, I think I was reading this when I was reading Neuromancer, maybe because there is this part about the sky above the port was the color of television, turned into that channel. It's a, I guess it's a first sentence in this book. Yeah, and this plane with I really like here about do jellyfishes go to cyberspace after they sting? Because you know, sometimes like bees, for example, when bee stings, it is dying on, like some animals are dying after stinging and so on. So it was like fantasy what's happening, what happens with jellyfishes.
Actually, you know, I was very impressed, among others, by that image, by that comparison of the jellyfish with the image of a dead channel at the television.
Yeah.
It is actually, it is like a metaphor of the unseen, of the invisible, invisible in proper and metaphorical way of understanding it. You know, it's as you mentioned, this poem was initially written in Czech. Actually, these Slavic Central European languages are very well represented within our serial, because actually, as Rick, just like me, we are and feel very close to some of those languages. I'm writing in Czech, and Rick has very close to Slovak, as actually his name could confirm you. Would you like, please, to mention that newest text you wanted to read to us, and which is connected to the dramatic things which are happening now? So this one was written in English or in Czech or in Ukrainian?
It is written in English. It's the beginning. I don't know why it happened, but it happened with me in English. Yeah, and you're reading my mind, because I was going to read this text right now. Yeah. So it is a small text that is called Tiny and Gentle. Once I moved far away and left only a small box after myself, with unnecessary but very soulful things inside. Tiny and gentle pieces of the life I loved. My friend promised to keep it. I promised to come and take it back once. Last time we were chatting at the very beginning of March. Where are you? I asked. Home is the safest place, she answered, before the connection was lost. Then I thought about her every day. And one day I remembered about my box. Might happen I will never see it again. Probably I've already lost all my tiny treasures. The same with my friend, maybe. War takes from us our treasures in the rudest way. We don't leave them by mistake somewhere. Don't forget them. They are not broken, not stolen. They just disappear. People's lives just disappear. Gentle and tiny. Yeah, and this is a story about my friend who spent 40 days in occupied Mariupol. She is in a safe place now with her parents and dog, but at the first I was really I was shocked that it can happen with somebody I know so close, because it was my good friend, and we were communicating often. And then at the beginning of March, I absolutely lost connection with her, and I didn't know nothing, totally nothing about her during like 40 days. Yeah, and then it happened that they had good luck, and they could somehow evacuate it. It was dangerous, but they could to get to the safe place on West Ukraine. So now she's fine. Yeah, but it was very I don't know, tragic situation, and I wasn't sure I will ever see her again. Yeah, and this text happened to me like and this symbol of loss, some treasures, some connections we have to people we love, or to some sometimes it's just small things that some small our treasures that we can have, and always this is the most gentle things in our lives, and they can be ruined in very easy and in very rudest way. Yeah.
Did you live
And
in
actually, it
Mariupol?
is. Yes.
Sorry.
I'm sorry, did you live in Mariupol?
No, I don't. I didn't.
What part of Ukraine did you grow up in?
In Western Ukraine, yeah. I had been living in Western Ukraine all my life, and some short time in Kyiv, but Kyiv is center of Ukraine. But this, my friend, we know each other from Lviv in the West Ukraine, where I had been living before, and she had also a flat there, but her parents were in Mariupol, and before war she went there to her parents and spent with them all this time, and all these 40 days they spent together. And but now she says that that her family now is very, very strong, that she feels that it made them really strong and good family, where everyone is very connected to another person, and they are like really togetherness.
That's
It
good to
is
hear.
impressive the way you managed with the means of poetry, of the sensitivity, and you named them small, gentle things, to express with small, gentle metaphors the big drama, the big tragedy of a whole nation. This is such a charming contradictory way of working with poetry, and I think this, and I have to tell this, I think this is one of the main features of your poetry, being able to surprise, to catch small things, big things with small means, with small words, with a couple of words. This capacity of concentrating, of focusing on something, and of expressing a lot of things only by combining a couple of words. And this is impressive that you manage this as in Ukrainian, also in English, and as it seems also in Czech, as those last texts, because sorry, besides the very last one, were written also in Czech. Iryna, thank you very much for your presence in our program. Congratulations for your poetry. Be strong and continue to be the great poetess you are. We are looking forward to your new books. Let them be in Czech, in Ukrainian, in English, I don't know, in any other languages you may know. I understand you speak also Polish. So with your international, your cosmopolitan ability of intellectually and sensitively adapting yourself, we are sure your next books will be at least as great as the ones you edited until now, and the ones you edited until now are really great. Good luck, and once again, thank you for being today here with us.
Thank you very much. I should say that you are analyzing my poetry much better than I do it. Thank you for that. Thank you for your good words. I really like to hear something how other people understand my poetry and how they feel it, and thank you. It's very it's a big inspiration for me, this such events and such communication and talks, possibility to talk about things I'm interested in and other people are. And thank you for this great company. I wish you a good part of the day. You are I have it is evening now in Czech Republic, so wish you a good rest of the day. Thank you.
Thank you very
very
much.
much for
Same
joining
to
us.
you. All the best.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, I am so pleased and honored to bring to our audience another wonderful poet. Miss Hodgetts is a writer, a poet, an artist, an educator, a woman who has been writing for a very long time. She's made it a point of hers to address a wide range of audiences, not just as so many of us poets do, address the world at large. She's also made a point of speaking to young people. Ladies and gentlemen, let me bring you Deborah M. Hodgetts from the UK. Deborah, welcome.
Hello, hi. Pleased to meet you all.
So glad you could join us. Deborah,
Thank you.
tell us a little bit about how you began to discover that you were a writer, that putting things down was important to you, that this kind of communication was important to you.
I've been writing since 2004, but prior to that, my inspiration has been born really from my mum, who is also a poet, and also my grandmother. And so I've greatly been inspired by both of them throughout my life. And most of my childhood I spent traveling around the circuits, poetry circuits with my mum when she was doing her performances. So yes.
There's that wonderful old saying that so many people use, well, it's in the blood. Well, in your case, it absolutely was. You come from a long line of poets. How wonderful. How wonderful.
Yeah.
So you saw words crafted, you heard your mother's voice, your grandmother's voice, you read their work as well as hearing them perform. You obviously knew that you had this voice that you had to bring out. Talk about your early times, I guess, in school or after school, working, reciting, writing. Talk a little bit about the young woman, Deborah.
So at the age of 7, I happy memories which were reignited a few days ago, actually. My grandmother bought me a typewriter, and she said, when you grow up, you're going to be a writer. I can see that. So I was overjoyed. I was always visiting the library with her, and books and reading were a really big part of my writing journey. They still are, and I think words, that's how I fell in love with words and language and how we use it. It's interesting because I think a lot of people think words are just words to be said, but they're much more than that. They have a music and a language of their own. I think it's just finding a resonance with what you're writing as well, makes quite a big difference.
Well, I've heard you read many times. I've read your work. So many writers have to find this way. How can I do that? How can I be that? I'm just so happy for you that you were literally seeing poets when you were a child. You knew there was a way. That's so wonderful for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I was just so grateful and so so proud of my mum and my grandma, and so proud of the people that I met at that when I was very young, and of course the people that I've met along the way on my journey, like yourself and many other poets that are now really, really close friends. So truly blessed with people like yourself.
Now, you've expanded beyond poetry. You write
Yeah.
short stories, you write fiction, you write plays, you write for film, you write blogs. You are an industry all by yourself. I'm going to ask you the terrible question of which of your children do you like best? Which of those writing voices do you enjoy the most? Is it your poetic
Okay.
voice, your storytelling voice? Tell me.
Okay, I would say that obviously, I love my poetry voice. However, at this moment in time, I'm developing my comedy writing voice.
I have no sympathy with that.
So yeah, so I'm developing that side of my writing, and also trying to look at different avenues of exploring language and words, and linking art and poetry. So later this year, I'm hoping to be making and creating some poetry films, which I hope I will be able to find a way of getting those out into the world. And then I have a few other ideas of using words and poetry to kind of support people that are going through difficulties. So these are all kind of different avenues that I'm exploring at the moment.
Well, we know that, a lot of poets write, if you will, therapeutically to process and drive away their own demons. Certainly, I think there's a wonderful place for poetry and for that self-exploration, healing sort of thing. I'm intrigued, of course, by the idea of mining more of your comedic talents. Goodness knows, in this world, there's a rich deposit of irony and sarcasm to explore.
Absolutely.
I'm going to ask the other question. What's the last thing you put pen to?
Okay, so
what's on your desk?
Very recently, so very recently I wrote 2 poems. They're still kind of in their early stages, so
oh yes, they have a gestation all their own.
They're still gestating, so they're not fully formed yet, but I would like to share them, and then I have a couple of poems from my poetry collection, if that's okay.
My dear, the floor is yours, and the walls. I'm going to keep part of the ceiling, but the floor is yours.
Okay, so the first one is called We're Just Toys. We sit on our shelves, a little battered, well-worn, tarnished, unloved. Our memories, just memories. We've lost parts, fragile hearts, hopeful, wanting. Maybe one day, new hands will lift us, love us, just toys.
And more Deborah Hodgetts, please.
Okay, this one's called I Feel. I feel I'm lost, tossed aside by an uncaring world. Do you see me? My hands are tied. I'm trapped in this endless loop. A long-lost friend, chaos spins out, draws me in again, pinning me to a wall of doubt and confusion. If you find me, be kind, be kind.
Lovely, just lovely.
Wonderful.
You have found so many voices within Deborah. I'm just so pleased, honored to know you. I want you to just talk just for a minute about what it was like to write some young adult fiction.
Yeah, the my young adult novel, The Curtain Twitches of Oakley Place, is based on a homeless teen. And the story behind me writing this young adult novel was because I befriended a homeless gentleman in London. I used to, every time I went past where he slept, and he also did beautiful drawings on the pavement with chalk. We used to chat for a very long time, most days, every time I went by, and we became quite good friends. And eventually I did actually go out and spend some time on the street as well, just to experience what life was really like. Because I think until you've done something, then you don't have the full picture of what is actually happening. So I went and spent some time, and yeah, still today, it brings up a lot of emotions and feelings about, how unjust and how, lots of governments and places around the world are not really doing quite enough to help homeless people. And at the end of the day, they're just human beings like us all. A lot of homeless people are not on the streets through choice. There's many reasons why they're out on the street. And a lot are not, using drugs or alcohol or anything like that. They're just people that, become homeless through sometimes most often through no fault of their own. So what I've been doing since 2017, when the book was released, is raise awareness, and all of the royalties from the sales of the book, every penny, I don't take any of it. I give and donate it to homeless charities not just in the UK, but in the USA and around the world as well. Just, so that I'm kind of giving back and supporting people that need that help the most.
Well, I'm not going to let you continue in that vein, because I want to also talk about your honors. You have received some prizes, if I'm not mistaken.
I have. Yeah, so for my script writing, in the last 12 months, I've been awarded 12 awards for my
Just
scripts.
12? What a
Just
slacker.
12, just 12. So yes, so I'm very inspired by that. And yeah, so at the moment I'm developing a teen drama series with an executive producer, and then I'm also developing a sitcom idea as well. So I'm busy writing and working on my
basically sitting on your laurels.
screenwriting. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, at least they're comfortable laurels. Okay,
but
now,
I'm also
another poem, if you would, my dear.
Yeah, sure. Okay, so this one's called Wilfred, and this poem was inspired by a series of poetry that I created and wrote when it was the commemorations of World War II and the First World War, and I was invited to perform a lot of written poems based on the war at various exhibitions around the UK. So this is one of them, and it's called Wilfred. Death can hold you not, for only time can tell the tolling of true love from the strength of the bell. Though we walk in two worlds, this you and I the next, we two bound in love now, as we will in the next.
Bravo,
Actually,
bravo.
it is to be felt that strong influence of the theater narrative, for screenplay narrative, also in the poems, as well as in the theater play, which sounds a little bit like poems. Really impressive.
Thank you so much.
We have time for two more, my dear.
Okay, so this one's called Ebb and Flow. Today we live, tonight we die. For this it twists in blood and flow. Deep emotions letting go of all the things we used to know. Slipping by and letting go of love and life we used to know.
So glad you could join us with this. You have one more you could share?
I have. It's called
And
Reflections.
we are truly blessed, my dear.
Thank you. Reflections of you. You pass me by on the street, a complete stranger, but you look like someone I thought I knew, a vision of someone who could be you. Eyes mockingly look hopeful, waiting to elicit your point of view. Shifting innocent reminders of you, chasing not knowing if the picture is true, a moment's reflection of a girl I once knew.
And as they say, coming back for a curtain call, she read.
Whole cycles of existence in 8 verses. This is not common. Really, this is fantastic.
Okay, so. Okay.
And Rick knows me very well. I'm not saying this each time.
Oh, thank you. Okay, so this poem is quite abstract. See if you can work out what it's about. Okay, so it's called Weep No More. Drape softly along, falling over your watery body as it undulates on rippled skin. Silent marks left as breaths of air lift your limbs delicately and splay your appendages, which break and fall. Battered by storm winds, you hold strong, graceful and silent, resting over calm waters.
Lovely. What it sounds to these ears like a tribute to a tree, but it's that tree of metaphor.
Yes, absolutely.
What a coincidence. My dear, an honor and a privilege to have you join us. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Marcia, would you like to offer any final benediction, sir?
Well, I feel myself honored and happy to having the opportunity to participate to this episode of Poets of the East, poetesses of different Easts, actually, each of them describing their peculiar poetical East in a such peculiarly metaphorical way. It was a wonderful night here, as Iryna was saying, each of us, we have different parts of the day where we are broadcasting from. It was, thanks to this recording session, it was a wonderful part of evening here, and I'm grateful to both of the poetesses and to the main producer of Poets of the East. You may not know him, Rick, but I will introduce him to you. It's a certain Rick Spisak, a great American poet. With the first occasion, I will introduce him to you because it really deserves.
Thank you, my brother. Thank you. So on behalf of Poets of the East, my brother Mircea and myself, Deborah, thank you so very much. I'm going to give you the last word.
I just want to say a huge thank you to you both. I'm just so honored as well to kind of be in your presence and to have this support, and be allowed to share my poetry and a little bit about myself. So thank you so much. I am so
Thank you.
grateful.
Thank you.
On behalf of Poets in the East and myself and Marcia, have a good night and welcome. So welcome.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
All the best. Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.